Sorry.
So QV, obviously, as we just mentioned, was a massive project in Melbourne and one that really seems to have been a catalyst for subsequent retail developments often, which you've also been involved with. Can you tell us a bit about the general strategy for QV and what it did that was fundamentally different to everything that had come before it?
Yeah, well, look, it's 10 years now since that building was, or that development was conceived. I was in 1999 when the City Council put the tenders out and so on. And remarkably, we got through all that, and our efforts with GrowCon pulled it off, so to speak. And I suppose the thing that really appealed to everybody that we pressed our case to was that we put the public realm as the primary element, and that was unheard of. And at that time, you have to think 1999 is, it's 10 years ago, and it's quite a long time in our world. So the idea that, and there's been so much precedent set by the way in which the city, and with its help with Jan Giel and its analysis of the way in which the city could be revived, and all the efforts of the City Council, and particularly Professor Rob Adams, it was important to see a site of that magnitude, a whole city block, looked at from an urban design point of view, rather than here's an opportunity to make the biggest, largest thing possible and corporatise the block, which in many ways had happened with the western blocks of the city over the last 20 or 30 years. So it was to break it down and allow individual uses to exist there and cohabitate on the site together, but each have their own presence rather than one use dominate the other.
And obviously the laneway system has been
so which led us to the laneway system
and all that. And what I mean, you're now going on to another big project with GrowCon and the CUB site. What are the lessons learned from there? I mean, is it sort of repeating the same kind of pattern?
Well, I think the fundamental lesson is really the dynamics of investment. And of course, at the time when QV was done, it was 65,000 square metres of commercial floor space, 600 odd apartments, 45,000 square metres of retail floor space, all built pretty much at once. CUBs in the way in which things are structured now is actually probably more likely to be a staged development, and one that's going to need to be organised so that bits and pieces can happen under their own steam. And that means that the dynamic of the master plan has to deal with that. And it's a different thing.
Will there be laneways at CUB in the same way, and also a similar model in terms of different architects doing buildings above podium level?
Yeah, it's a similar delivery method. I mean, that proved to be enormously successful for everyone, really, for the stakeholders at the client level, the various architects and designers.
The diversity of architects, you mean?
Yeah, that's right. And also, in the end, I suppose you could argue that therefore there's a much better result from a public point of view.
One criticism of the laneways that I've heard in relation to QV was that they run east-west instead of north-south. Is that something you agree with, or is there a good reason they run east-west?
Yeah, I suppose, like all of those things, the laneways were a sort of a formalisation of an informal tool to get servicing to the city and all the rest of it, and land subdivision that occurred, several decades ago. But in this instance, the city block and its sort of permeability sort of stopped at the State Library. So it was hard to perpetuate a link in that direction. It
was about being across it, right?
Yeah, we've definitely worked in an east-west direction, and I think it's actually pretty hard to say that it's problematic. And ironically, now what's happened is the connection to the State Library has prompted another development.
I reckon it works really well. I mean, our office is not far from there. I walk diagonally through that, almost every day, because it's a great cut through. I just wanted to talk briefly about one of my favourite buildings, and it's certainly my favourite, I think, NH building is the RSPCA building out in Burwood. And I was on the national jury of the Architecture Awards, and we went out and had a look at that, and and we were just. I just thought it was a fantastic sort of development for dogs. And we were thinking, we were looking at a whole lot of multi-residential developments, and we were thinking only if these were designed with the same sort of skill and sort of amenity that the dogs have got out the RSPCA, they'd be better places. But it sort of had everything about sort of orientation and dealing with water and, dealt with all the fundamentals of it.
Yeah, well, I heard you talking earlier, and it's a common thrust, and I talk about it endlessly is that when, before air conditioning, you were on about air conditioning and how buildings were designed, and that building had to work in that way. It had to work without sort of any sort of augmented systems of any sort. So it did take a little bit of an understanding of how things work naturally. But the hill slopes down to the north. It faces north. The dogs get a great view, and
it's a great amenity for what's a lost dogs home. And I would encourage everyone to get out there and have a look at it and pick up a dog. Look at a little dog on your way through.
It is for life.
Yes,
we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with Roger Nelson after this. I think we're we're listening to a bit more Roger Nelson right now. Roger, this is Funky Woman.
And he was gutsy, you know. There was no mucking around with Roy.
There sure wasn't, Simon. And you're listening to Architects on 3AAA. Roger Nelson's in the studio with us from NH Architecture. And just before, Roger, another one of your tracks. That was Funky Woman, Harp Roger.
That's right.
And was that you on
self-recorded? Yes.
You on vocals again?
Well, there's no vocals there. You might have noticed. It was just an instrumental.
Clearly, I didn't notice.
You need to pay more attention.
I was too busy.
You will get some.
Rehearsing your next question.
They're just very quiet vocals.
Yes.
Humming, perhaps.
And Roger, you're in here because mainly because we talk about NH Architecture, but also, and of course, your fantastic music. But we've got a really big
killed when I get home.
really big thing going on in Melbourne at the moment, and I think this is just a real extension of the whole revitalisation of Melbourne over the last 15 or 20 years or so, and it is the reinstatement of the Myer store as a centrepiece in the city, as a centre retail piece in the city, and it's been in decline for quite some time now as a sort of retail environment. It's been patched over and it was looking a bit shabby actually. It must have been a big challenge to renovate such a Melbourne icon.
Yeah, well, certainly it was, and it has been, and but it's a marvellous result. We're really proud of it. I think everyone is involved in it's really proud of it. Myer have embraced it dramatically. Colonial have been excellent clients in that regard, and it's been a tour de force really of retail development, and it's fantastic. It's been able to happen in Melbourne really because
and even though not complete, the Death Star is operational, as I discovered on the weekend.
Yes. I think you think the Death Star, that's the one out at Taronga, which is the old Coles Myer headquarters.
The offices, yes, on the freeway.
And they've all been painted white now,
Really?
Yeah, they've been out there with a roller, and they've painted the white out of it. But anyway, the Myer store, I suppose, it's been as it was called, the Myer Emporium. It was central and has been central to Melbourne's ethos as far as retail is concerned.
It's very close to this idea you were talking about before about just retail as a kind of civic building. This is probably one of the closest historical examples of that, because it's very well known in the public consciousness, and things like the Mural Hall, which is a sort of a public space in some ways, and that's been brought back to life.
Absolutely, well, I mean, all those things, and it's been in, I suppose, as a venue of retail activity. Department stores have had, they've had a checkered history in the last couple of years, last couple of decades. So worldwide, that is, and it's not often. Also, one of the other observations, it's not often, because of the way retail investment works in Australia, it's not often that a store is built bespokely for one retailer. It's generally built. The retailer then decides they want to lease it or not, and away you go. Whereas, of course, the original department stores in Paris and London and San Francisco and New York, etc., are all pretty much built by the retailer for the retailer. And we look at the famous Prada building in Tokyo, and of course that was built by Prada. It was built for them. They commissioned it and everything.
So what does that mean in terms of what you're actually able to do there? Or
well, I suppose what it meant, there was a much more, in this instance, the marriage of Colonial and Myer meant that there was the building was approached on a bespoke basis. It was actually designed for Myer, expressly designed for them, and it wasn't like design a building then see who we can lease it to. It was a much more direct relationship. So it meant that they participated clearly in what it was that was going to be the outcome.
And it seems to be a building of two very distinct ends, a historic end on Burke Street Mall with I must say, an incredibly beautiful new glass canopy above the shop windows, and then at the back, a far more contemporary solution, both in terms of the rear facade, which is a kind of triangular mosaic.
Sort of Harlequin.
Yeah. Harlequin. There's a great, isn't there a great film I'm thinking of now? No, Mannequin, I'm sorry. And then there's a great roof that wraps over the top of it, a big gold roof, and that kind of connects all the bits together.
Yeah, that's right. Well, three quick things. There was to us there was the observation of the old Melbourne that had all its frontages to Flinders Street Station and the public circulation and people coming and going.
And just on that, we're still able to use the phrase more front than Myers?
Oh, absolutely. We've got double the frontage now. And I'm sure they'll be pleased to say, and certainly the case on Saturday with the Christmas parade, I noticed Santa was sitting in front of Myers, literally.
Well, they were sponsored.
Well, of course. I mean, I was waiting until you picked that up. Anyhow, of course, when the dynamics of the city changed with the loop line going in, it equaled up, you might say, the way in which people access the city. So you've sort of, in a way, got the new city coming from the north. So a new building present in the street systems of the little streets, which had also been embraced in more recent times as a formal frontage as opposed to a service frontage, seemed to us to be a really logical thing to do.
And along what's that little Burke, little Collins Street there, Little Burke, there's now seems to be a bit of a battle of the triangles between between your building and the DJ's
David Jones building
next door, which is also using a triangular grid, a glazed one.
Yeah,
very interesting outcome.
Yeah, no, well, again, I have to say it was a complete surprise, really, that was the case. But I mean, ours had really emerged from a distillation of the Art Deco motifs that were present on the building's traditional facade. But also there was this sense that we wanted to get a vigorous, textured building. I mean, albeit that it takes up quite a proportion of that frontage on the southern side. We didn't want to lose the sort of texture and grain of the little streets, which was really important to everyone and obviously, and it's pointed out often to us by agencies.